Before I introduce our event tonight, I wanted to inaugurate the Poetry Room's first annual Friend of the Word Award, because that's what we named it last night. And honor two remarkable citizens of our community who work tirelessly on behalf of others and our art form. As with almost all poetry prizes, the reward is absolutely nothing. Nothing tangible, at least, but our gratitude and our applause. So please join me in applauding this year's recipients, who are Daniel Winchell. And Kate Glavin. Okay, welcome to our second installment of Boston Originals, a series that celebrates some of the most vital work that is emerging from the greater Boston region. No single event can ever represent the totality and manyness that is Boston and Boston area poetics, nor can I find my place on the page. And I don't even drink. But incrementally, I hope to honor the spectrum of possibilities and to demonstrate how much I've come to admire the urgency and particularity and, dare I say, self-reliance of the voices in the Boston vicinity. And speaking of voices and Boston originals, I think you all know the story, but back in the late 20s, a certain professor with the last name of Packard, whose granddaughter is in the back row, began to press Harvard to found a library of voices that would be equal to a library of books, and to launch a record label, one of the first of its kind, for poetry recordings. And you are sitting and standing in the midst of his vision. He had several reasons for doing so, but I'm just going to name two. One was that nobody knew how to read free verse, something you might argue we still don't know. And the other was that totalitarianism was rising in Europe, and it was using this thing called the airwaves, the radio, to transmit its message. As someone who taught rhetoric and speech, Packard believed that Harvard students and anyone who had access to these records through libraries could be trained through poetry and oratory to give speeches that were just as compelling, but in defense of democracy and of what we at least purported to be our values. Welcome, John and Oni. I should add that among the many who were trained directly by him on how to give speeches that drew upon poetry and such historic addresses like Lincoln's Gettysburg Address was none other than John F. Kennedy. So glad that all those 20th century concerns about totalitarianism and dictatorship are in the past. But in any case, two things should be very, very short and over before they're done. Trump's presidency and my introduction. We've got 8 remarkable readers for you tonight, an intermission in which to commune with one another. We have a Cold War era telephone straight from my grandparents' house right over there for you to call the past and say, we're sorry, we did it again. And we also have a bell from Hiroshima to ring, truly from Hiroshima, for the sake of peace. There are so many sounds that can be made for the sake of justice and truth, and words are one of them. And now I invite you to hear them. Please welcome our first set of readers, Tanya Larkin, Sandra Lim, Audrey Mardavich, and Clint Smith, who will read in that order.
Okay. So, is this on? Does it matter?
It's not an amplifying mic.
Oh, okay. Damn. All right.
But it did pick that up.
Oh. So, Doug Powell, the poet, had this code word for being high. And it was, I feel a little bit country. He usually used this on the phone. I'm feeling a little bit country, meaning it's the first half as I'm feeling a little bit country and rock and roll, but I am feeling a little bit country, and I'm not high. I've just been up since 4. Okay. So the first poem I'm going to read is "To Love a Fascist, How Could You?" The The twist is already happening, both toward and away from those who have so disappointed. To speak, you speak of nothing but the children these days, their games, their night terrors, what they feed their animals. Your parents, your best friend's husband, your old coach, your godmother, they are so good with the children. My son wakes from a nap into the winter dark and rails against the sun. Where did it go? I want it to come back. It's a full-on tantrum against the end of day, which has come too soon. Some people just can't let go. Not like you. Who is closest to living as many lives as possible? Who has preferred the long answer, even if the long answer is yes? If not you, then who? For some, a paradise in fragments is not a paradise at all. They must make it cohere. Haven't you done the same? Tried to sew up the scraps with your gold-plated needle, touching the end of the thread to your tongue to wet it? Haven't you gone so far as to try the needles of a forest floor to thread the light where it seems to least comprehend? Because darkness knows itself all too well. My child overhears the silence of its conviction. It makes me want to put the house in order as if we could any second be interrupted by a knock. We could be leaving. We could be staying to greet a friend we haven't seen in ages. My thoughts scramble to put first things first. What are first things? In the shower, you soap your crotch and underarms first. Out of the shower, music, which lays out a plan beyond yours, which makes you scribble out a poem that is also a plan. Pull up the sheets, smooth and tuck, prepare your desk, scribble again. Prepare your desk, pull up your pants, and feel fine in them. At the party I never get to, an heiress pretends to be a hustler an heiress. That day the first will be last. We will all be hustlers. So I hustle to the party and share mascara at the mirror with the hustler and the heiress, in case it is that day. When I hustle back for bedtime, I sing along my depths, so the child falls asleep faster. I keep singing until the song is finished, though he is dead asleep and no note, however faint, however felt, can reach him. It seems important to keep singing too, though I'm not saying that to myself. In one of the books I'm working on, I am writing about physical places that then I kind of feel out the metaphysicality of. So this one is called The Path, and it's about the path in Somerville. On your left, says a cyclist, the pedestrian shifting like slow schools of fish. Always the grandparents and the parents, the little one in the stroller, the dad's parents, the dad pushing the stroller, the mom with a coffee chatting easily with the in-laws, or the senior out for her evening constitutional, or the mother running her young son so later he will sleep. If you are not on a bicycle or jogging along at a clip, a toddler will approach you on his scooter. Well, where are you going? He says to two Indian men with handlebar mustaches. They are whipping their wrists and hands around as they speak. Where is your license, they say to the toddler, twisting their mustaches. They say, there is rumor of a puppy up ahead with beautiful markings, and so we scooter forth, obeying all the traffic rules. My son says he doesn't like people walking without dogs on the path. He says he doesn't like people walking without dogs off the path. Many smiles are exchanged on the path. Sometimes I think they are smiling because they see a white woman and her black child. They're into it. When someone shoots a dark look, I think it is because I am a white woman with a spirited black child. Where we used to live, the church bells rang out 1:15. On the last evening hour, they played a small tune before striking all 8 hours. More complex tunes rang out for weddings, funerals, vespers, and mass. What do those bells mean? Asked my son. It means it's almost 1 o'clock. It means someone is getting married. On the path, we hear wind-mushed chimes on someone's back porch. Mom, what do those mean, Mom? They don't mean anything, and that's the way I like it. On the path, we always meet someone we know. There is much fanfare, much reunion. What are you doing here on the path? Is something we don't ask because we are either embarrassed by the obvious or don't want to pry. Runners run past. A child's bike with silver streamers flying straight in a diagonal windfall of leaves. To love is to know nothing over and over. Some wizened cowboy type in a Harley T, kind of guy who likes to say, "Don't do me any favors" to his lovers, sees my son and hears me yelling from behind. "Put down that stick." "All you have to do is keep him safe," says the guy. In other words, what if it's not a problem? In other words, who are you to separate that boy from his stick? I had an idea about sticks until we started on the path. To love is to know you don't know, but to want to so badly. Child, I want to know who you are. By the time I reach the path, I am so old it is impossible not to fall in love with every face I meet because they look so familiar. Don't I know you from school? Aren't you my doctor? Didn't we play softball together when we were kids? Didn't your trailer at the bottom of the hollow on Graceland smell like cat piss and BO? Didn't I love going there anyway? Wouldn't I go on to dream of a life in a slightly cleaner trailer? Weren't you at the Barbie party in Manhattan the night Princess Diana died? Don't you shop at Market Basket? Didn't I sit with you in the waiting room, sit with you on a plane? I know you from somewhere. Do I know you from the path? As for the faces, I fall in love. As for the other faces, I fall in love with them too, because I am so surprised at not having seen them before. But woe to the faces who are not familiar, who look up from tying a shoelace or let my son pet their friendly dog, because that is all it takes for the baseline joy I always feel on the path to erupt like an abscess of glee. I will follow you down the path so you can't but feel followed. I will ask you where you are from, how long you have been here. Would you like a leaf? I might go so far as to ask you what my son asked me this morning. Do you like being born? I do. I'd like to do it more often. Fall out of my mother, find my legs, and stand. How about you? If I met an erstwhile friend on the path, one I thought had abandoned me, I wouldn't ask them why. Why did you drop off the face of my earth without giving me reason? Why did you stop returning my calls? On the path I would be as warm as the earth to a corpse in summer. The old man from the home with the awful toupee drawn across his forehead like a dead squirrel, what happened to him? I used to see him all the time on the path. And our neighbor walking without her dog, I should make her a lasagna. When friends come visit, we take them on the path. We see another group of friends moving in the opposite direction. There's another group of friends, says my son. A bunch of young boys playing terrible music. They look at us and look away, afraid we will think they are stoned. We think they are stoned. Pro tip, either look or look away. My strategy was always to approach everyone and ask, whoa, where are you going? On the path, it seems wrong to wear headphones. I'll give the boys that. When I am alone on the path, I wear them anyway and have more ideas than I should. Sometimes I just want the path to end. Then I meet another mother standing in front of the map. We stand for minutes, then decide we still have no idea where we are. It has nothing to do with us. It has to do with the imprecision of the map. Thank you. Thank you for letting my son fire his music gun at your head. Thank you for letting him jump in the candy puddle beside you. Above all, thank you for killing time with me right here on this path. I really needed that. A man with a destination passes in the other direction and yells, "Screw yourselves." No. Screw yourselves. Maybe I just can't do it. Okay. I go numb and realize my kid didn't hear. It stings for a long stretch of the path, but then the pain abates when our sticks become magic wands. We turn the bushes into dragons. We turn the trees into dads. But when the game is over, the sting returns. At home, I tell my mother, and she says, "That happened because your child is black." We meet my son's summer playground friend and his angelic mom on the path. They shriek made up words, and he runs ahead fast and long until he's lost sight of his friend when he turns around. It's dark. I tell him they probably went home for dinner. I say we will probably see him soon on the path. I tell him we will come every night to the path, even Saturday and Sunday, so we don't miss his friend. Then out of the darkness and under the lamplight, the whole family appears, his friend in a stroller between his dad and the mom, who is super pregnant, I didn't realize before. We surprise them talking about the moon. When we part, I say, "Did you hear about the moon? Let's go find it," which we do. A few times along the path, as it appears now and then through the branches, he says, "Is this another moon?" No, it's the same moon. "Is this the other moon? Is this another moon?" Nope, there's only one moon. "It's all the same moon?" Yes, it's all the same moon. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. I keep thinking this is an amplifying mic. It's not going to help me. Thank you, Christina. Thank you all for coming. I feel like with this stool that I should be singing you a folk song, but I will not. I'm going to read some poems from the wilderness and then a couple of new ones. Can everybody hear me? I'll try to project. This first poem is called Amor Fati. Inside every world, there is another world trying to get out. And there is something in you that would like to discount this world. The stars could rise in darkness over heartbreaking coasts, and you would not know if you were ruining your life or beginning a real one. You could claim professional fondness for the world around you. The pictures would dissolve under the paint coming alive, and you would only feel a phantom skip of the heart, absorbed so in the colors. Your disbelief is a later novel, emerging in the long, long shadow of an earlier one. Is this the great world, which is whatever is the case? The sustained helplessness you feel in the long emptiness of days is matched by the new suspiciousness and wrath you wake to each morning. Isn't this a relationship with your death too, to fall in love with your inscrutable life? Your teeth fill with cavities. There is always unearned happiness for some, and the criminal feeling of solitude. Always, everyone lies about his life. Human interest story. Snow would have been breaking the drifts that day on a mild mood. My father was boarding at the home of a missionary couple in Seoul, getting by on books and the radio and cheap noodles. His older brother hanged himself that winter in Busan. They would say afterward that it was a plain death, funded by bad numbers, some selfishness, unusual cold. Think of a needle dropped into the sea. He had a pleasantly objective feeling about himself that morning as the early sky gently ripped into red. He thought about business English, the truth of money. Across town, a diary opened, and there were the white, cooling coals in barrels. There was a pretty young wife and one serious boy and one very quiet girl. They awakened one day to a new planet where the spaces between people appeared slightly widened. Maybe you can't penetrate events with reportage, but facts have a sly, unanswerable texture that appears social. To relieve ourselves of open-ended narrative, we read into the winter stars all evening. There are just stars and stars and stars. We know what it's like to fall in love and be disassembled, but we still want to pull death right off the bodies of one another. These were spectacular nights, said my father. They were full of philosophy and political theory, noisy reversals, French movies. The romantic grace we comprehend sits with ease in the real world. It is almost nothing. Now he is carrion, stitched forever in the cramp of a trial. No one can evict us from books, he used to say, running through astonishment at full speed. Envoi Lazarus. Lazarus woke to the miracle of no longer fearing failure. He lifted his two sides from the ground as he tried to speak, one part gathering darkness, one part humming. When he walked out, he glimpsed a world never tried. At the crucial point, there is yet more than one way of proceeding, but it seldom appears that way. This is a teeny poem from a larger poem called Homage to Mistress Bradstreet. You may have heard of that title. And this is just a little piece. It's called Poetry, the Author to Her Book, which actually is, again, a stolen title. It's the thing I choose. A nice bed in the hospital from which to write about spring snow on the forest floor. The New World. The world we see never is the world that is. The senseless morning light cuts its white eyes open. What is the lecture of the darkest pines, the way they hang, their stillness against us? If I beggar myself for love, do I move from night into more night? If I swallow a mouthful of ground glass, do I not slip past languages? Thunderous wakefulness is ceaseless needles through the casing. There are only the living and the dead. Roses climbing a battered trellis. A caterpillar turns its hard black goggles upon the cold meat of me. Drinking wholly from the world remains dark argument, hardly moral. To be living in the feast sweetens my idea of death its foreknowledge and its art. Affliction, make yourself a scar upon my house and count the ways. And the last one is called Wintering. The stars gave up their deep drifting and touched bottom. No clouds toppled across the snow wilderness. No gloom dark tree glitter winding and twining its silks. Blankness, egg quiet. The level sprawl of the world drew away tinily in every direction. Afternoons remained unknown to each other. Yet loss keeps thudding past my house, telling me I'm not done. My heart's still leaping like rats. Okay. Thank you. I have two more, but they're teeny. Just because I'm a slow writer, but it's like these two tiny poems. This one is called Innocence and Experience. I know. I can't, no imagination. Innocence and experience. Are we going to keep to one grand concern, like a serious drinker who sticks to one drink? And the last poem I'll read, it was written on the occasion to an invitation to respond to Langston Hughes's 1921 poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. So this is my response, and again, very short. This is called, I do not wish to lie with my own kith and kin. It is not true that it doesn't matter where you live. Deracination, my little Apollo. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Christina's the best, yeah? Don't you think? She's the best. Park Street. The fumes, the pigeon carcasses, the tiny bags of dog shit. Catching up to no one. The Vietnamese woman, her cell phone, the early morning thought blankness. Past the Akitas, past the street glitter, past the pink house, the rows of roses. Here is where it smells like biscuits. Here is where I take caution. Here is where the working men holler. Here is where I end up crossing. Here is where the white dog gets loose. Here is the gate I shoo him to. Here is where there once was a bowling alley. Here is the alley where they dump the cooking oil. Here is a line of used motorcycles I dream of one day buying. Here is where I notice the street is always wet, where I decided to turn around, where the sunset surprised me, where I once took a photo of a beautiful green door outside the Chinese place near the train. Melissa. Can we drink the water from the styrofoam cup? Melissa, can we walk the length of the diminishing estate? Melissa, the moon is not quite a piano, nor a sunset behind the abandoned chapel before the blue hills. The moon is not quite a bookend, nor a fireplace, imported wildflowers, nor a portico, nor calendar, nor notepad, nor pen. Melissa, the moon is not quite right, not here atop the cold hill. Recovery. Remember that starting over is not a crime. Day one does look like a black hole, and I know that something beautiful will come of that song. I know that it is terrible in the dark and friends feel impossibly far away. I know you are alone this morning, and you were alone last night, and you were alone the afternoon before, before starting over again, before you drew up the plans for yourself. If I could draw the plans for you, I would draw the plans for you. Sunlight. I would draw it coming through a window to shine on your stomach because you deserve moments of existence despite suffering. You deserve an afternoon despite the map that leads you away from your heart. Not all songs need to be sad songs when you write them in your mind. Write them despite the fact that they too will betray you, and like your legs that will lead you out the door and into the night. Write a song against legs. Write it in the brightness of morning light, when starting over is not a dream, it is an admission of being of the earth. This is the year. Around the dinner table, one friend was breaking up with her therapist, while the other friend was alienated for never having seen one. Recently, my therapist asked me to face this thing that's been bugging me, but I hate making phone calls, and I hate asking people for favors because it triggers my anxiety. And most of all, I hate being subservient to men, lawyer types, but so many times a day we are forced to rely on them. At my job, I said, I never want to hear a man's voice ever again, and I wasn't fired. Maybe because others agreed. It felt totally good to hate men in public despite this being the year my father died, despite all the public things I've had to say for and about him, despite the fact that I loved my father, but he was mostly bad. Oh, father, my dead father. The winter was cruel to us. The skies that were clear and bright and reflecting across uncountable surfaces were lying. This is the year of the photograph, of the dead body, of the shoddy work of despair, of the workman, of the work. Scorch. Tiny bowl of lemon slices on the counter, and I walk from the bed to poke a fork in one and place it in my tea. The tattered shade is near destruction, the birds, the ticking of the red clock. I am not quite curious about my neighbor, but I watch him through the dirty window anyway. He and different women go out to his porch late at night, and once he sang My Way so loudly, and despite that I was asleep and disturbed, it was pure, and I smiled and fell back asleep. I slept alone last night, and I think someone stole a car as I heard the alarm swirl in and out of my dreams, and eventually there was a siren, and eventually airplanes, and a quiet voice asking if I was okay. This afternoon is possibly too quiet, except for the typing I can't slow down from and the remote work I do daily. I hope I am at least helping someone, or else what do I do this for? It is clear I have not resisted enough. I haven't written letters in a long time, and I am unsure who my collaborators are. Who am I in conversation with except myself? I am so bored, and I am unknowledgeable. I do not speak with authority, but have heard that when you do, people listen and think you are smart. You don't need to be right, you just need to be loud. If you are unsure, you just need to nod your head up and down and smile. You just need to constantly affirm those in power, and that will make you seem powerful too. Holding secrets is another way to gain control. It is best if you forget them as soon as they are told to you. I have no problem forgetting because I am rarely even listening. That is something I want to work on. There are many things I want to work on, like ways to brighten my eyes and my spirit, or how I want to start pronouncing important like important. No one sings anymore, and it is true, I want to be more like a knitting needle. There aren't enough hours to accomplish that because I am a career woman with a sweatshirt on. My friends think I have given up because I am part of a complex. The truth is, I want money. I want lots of money and comfort. I don't want to die owing you. I don't want to be on the phone all afternoon with the state. I want a dentist. I want to be able to do a back bend. I want to look in the mirror and be like, damn, but I don't want to see my teeth looking back at me. It is easy to get out of bed in the cold or the dark or get on the train. It is not so easy to burn up. It is not so easy to work your way into oblivion. Glassworks. Like a seagull on wet tracks, dancing, and this coat looking like there's a body in it. Like daring the seagull to speak. Like the yum-yum turning into T-Mobile overnight, and overnight turning into pink lights. Like the little girl next to me who is so popular, who is wearing pink too, and all the strangers on the train who are her friends. I have a few young friends. Like Malibu Beach is a swamp, and the rain and tides and the water creeping up the garages, like when a fog settles over Boston and the sky is cold and unforgiving, and I am not myself but something more, like a fountain, like an ice luge, like the incredible emptiness between two people hugging, like I am all shoulders today, like I am monochromatic, like I am silently not subtle, like feeling, like walking with my mouth open, like maybe today is a good day to love a little bit more, or I don't know, it could just be this music. My platform. More epics in 2017. More beautiful women in 2017. More normal women in 2017. More older women in 2017. More young women in 2017. More sewing in 2017. More singing in 2017. More action in 2017. More water in 2017. Less fire in 2017. Less drought in 2017. Less police in 2017. More archives in 2017. More organization in 2017. More adornment in 2017. More beautiful asses in 2017. More women living together in 2017. More women in general all the time. More women singing in 2017. More pushing the century forward in 2017. More education in 2017. More reading in 2017. More poetry in 2017. No more demagogues in 2017. No more fire in 2017. No more prisons in 2017. No data collection. No surveillance. No borders. No form. More raising up the epics of women in 2017. More loving our children in 2017. More fucking singing in 2017. More worshiping of women, more holding up of their work, more lovemaking, way more lovemaking in 2017. Thank you.
How's everybody doing? Good, good. This is my first book that just came out about 2 months ago, so it's very exciting. I always like to tell people when I first got it, I was very enamored with the texture of it. And I was just kept touching it, and I emailed my publisher. I was like, what is this remarkable texture of this book? And he emailed me back, and he said, and it was spelled M-A-T-T-E. And I was like, oh, mate. and my partner was like, no, it's Matt. And I was like, no, this is mate. I don't know. So I forever think that they messed up with the pronunciation, but this is a collection that is sort of wrestling with the marathon of cognitive dissonance that it is to grow up as a young black person in this country, and how one wrestles with the tension of growing up in a home in which you feel loved, affirmed, and celebrated, and then going out into a world in which you are often rendered a caricature of fear. And one of the sort of prevailing themes of the book is thinking about what is colloquially known as the talk in the Black community and the conversation that Black parents have to have with their sons about how to navigate a world that is taught to fear them. So I was thinking a lot about what that conversation looked like in my own household, and as a sort of artistic endeavor, tried to imagine what it might look like if inanimate or non-human objects were having that same conversation with young Black children. And so this is a suite of 5 poems. What the ocean said to the Black boy. You know how to swim, boy? I know you can float. Felt you bobbing along my surface before you even knew you could. They say you just a conflagration of bad intentions, boy. They use me to put you out. Don't want you burning this place down. Again. They see a little too much Louverture in you. A little too much Turner. A little too much of what they already had enough of. What you see when you look at me? You know how many of y'all I swallowed? You just a drop of ink on this canvas, boy. They call me blue because they don't understand how the sky works. They call you Black because they don't understand how God works. What the cicada said to the Black boy. I've seen what they make of you, how they render you a multiplicity of mistakes. They have undone me as well, pulled back my shell and feasted on my flesh, claimed it was for their survival. And they wonder why I only show my face every 17 years, but you're lucky if they let you live that long. I could teach you some things, you know. Have been playing this game since before you knew what breath was. This here is prehistoric. Why you think we fly? Why you think we roll in packs? You think these swarms are for the fun of it? I would tell you that you don't roll deep enough, but every time you swarm, they shoot. Get you some wings, son. Get you some wings. What the fire hydrant said to the Black boy. We got a tangled history, the two of us. Must be hard to look at me and just see summertime, just see childhood, just see something to keep you cool in the heat. They say we both stay posted on corners. They say we both come with warnings for others not to stand too close. But we both mind our own business until people use us for things we were never meant for. Do you know what it means for your existence to be defined by someone else's intentions? A burning home, a burning cross, putting a boy against the wall so the dogs have an easier time. Of course you know. A prison cell, an empty gun, a mourning mother of a boy who thought sending him to that school across town would mean he'd have an easier time. But when they open us, spilling, until there's nothing left inside, everyone stands around to watch. What the window said to the Black boy. When someone breaks me, they call it a crime. They call it property damage. They call it the breaking the social contract. When someone breaks you, they call it inevitable. They call it your fault. They call it Wednesday. They say it's you who came cracked, came shattered right out the box. But they don't know that this is just something you do to show how many of you there are. That none of you are the same. That the more shards there are, the more ways there are to refract this light that envelops us each day. What the cathedral said to the Black boy. Come inside, child. Rest yourself. It's okay to want to be held. Ain't we all just trying to be some type of sanctuary for someone? For every year we are not destroyed. Do they not remind us what a miracle it is to have lasted this long? Amid this plunder, amid all this wreckage, take a breath and call it prayer. Take a step and call it living. What that ocean tell you, child? That they're frightened of you? They fear you because they ain't ready for your type of holy. Close your eyes. Those stained glass shadows. All we got is what we name ourselves. Otherwise, I am just a room. You are just a body. And we know how wrong that is. So this is a poem. When I first became a writer, so to speak, I very much sort of ran away from the label because I felt like to be a writer meant you had to stand in some sort of position of sanctimony and bestow answers and solutions upon the world. And that felt overwhelming to me. But what I love about the genre of poetry is that it simply allows you to wrestle with the questions and doesn't necessitate that you have to have the answers. And that's something that means a lot to me. And so Hurricane Katrina was my senior year of high school, and I'm from New Orleans. And so Katrina was something that I sort of suppressed in my own collective social memory, because it was a sort of traumatic experience. And I didn't write about it for a long time because I didn't know how, and I didn't know what sort of solution I would come to at the end. And so this is a poem about the questions that came from that. What is left? How warm did the water have to be before it gave the sky permission to crumble? When the levees broke open, did the ocean intend to swallow the city or find refuge inside of it? Is it wrong to love something more after it has already disappeared? Is it still called disappearing if no one knew you were there? The scientist tells me that we have been disappearing for a long time now. The evangelist tells me this is what happens when you make a mockery of time. The television tells me this is really the best thing that could have happened to a burning city. My mother was born in the city that is asking how this happened. I was born in the city that knows how this happened. I was born in the same city as my mother. I was born in the city which I am told makes it mine. My father was not born in the city but has lived here longer than I have been alive. Can you claim something as your own if you don't remember how you found it? I come from a city that is drowning while being told it is rinsing itself clean. This is the title poem of the book, Counting Descent. The book it's sort of thinking about lineage, both in like a macro and micro level context. So what does it mean to be Black in America? What does it mean to be an American from Louisiana, from New Orleans? And on a sort of a micro context, what does it mean to be my grandfather's grandson, my mother's son, somebody's partner, somebody's friend, somebody's teacher? And how does this sort of ever-present negotiation of those two things shape the way that I understand and navigate the world? And so it's counting descent, lineage. It's also a play on like political dissent. The epigraph of the book is a quote from Ralph Ellison: "I recognize no dichotomy between art and protests." It's sort of like fundamentally rejecting this notion that one's politics should not be embedded in their art, and that somehow your political disposition existing in your art compromising the artistic integrity of the work is like a false notion. And so this is the title poem of the book. Counting Descent. My grandfather is a quarter century older than his right to vote and 2 decades younger than the president who signed the paper that made it so. He married my grandmother when they were 4 years younger than I am now and were twice as sure about each other as I've ever been about most things. They had 6 children separated by 9 years, 3 cities, and 1 Mason-Dixon line. There were twice as many boys as girls, but half as many bedrooms as children, which most days didn't matter because poor ain't poor unless you name it so. And kids prefer playing to counting, so there was never much time to wallow in anything but laughter. My mother was the 3rd oldest, or the 4th youngest, depending on who you ask. She was born on a federal holiday, which my grandmother was thankful for. Said the good Lord only got 1 day off when he built the world, so 1 day is all she needed too. Mom says Pops was persistent. Wouldn't give up when he asked if he could take it on the street to get some coffee, which back then cost $2 less than it does now. Now, Mom is trying to stop drinking coffee, but she still loves Pops. They've been married for 31 years and have 3 kids who are 6 years and 1,517 miles apart. My birth took 12 hours and 43 minutes, which is probably because my head is 5 times too big. Mom said that my head was big because I needed enough room to read all the books in the library, which seemed like infinity, even though I really didn't know what infinity meant. But I heard my teacher say it once when she talked about the universe, and books felt like the universe to me. I was pretty good at math too, until about 5th grade when they started putting numbers and letters together, which didn't make much sense. My brother is 70 months younger than me, but is taller and knows more about numbers, so it doesn't always feel like this is true. My sister is 24 years of loyal and 8 years of best friend. I am the oldest of 3, but maybe the most naive. I still believe that we can build this world into something new. Some place where I can live past 25 and it's not a cause for celebration, because these days I celebrate every breath. Tried to start counting them so I wouldn't take each one for granted. I wish I could give my breath to the boys who've had theirs taken, but I've stopped counting because it feels like there are too many boys and not enough breath to go around. So I just got engaged, which is like a very exciting thing. Shout out to all the couples who come here, like to the literary events and keep the flames alive. That's wonderful. I admire you. That's what I'm hoping for. And part of what I feel very fortunate to have is a relationship with someone for whom like the sort of quotidian daily minutia is as important as like the parties and the dinners and things like that. And that I had a friend tell me that the quiet moments were the thing that like makes a relationship last. It's like not all the other stuff. It's like the moments where it's just you two laying in bed. And so this is a poem about that moment. Each morning is a ritual made just for us. You wake up first on the left side of the bed, kiss my cheek, and let your feet slide onto the coolness of the wooden floor, which sometimes creaks depending on how cold the weather is, but today it is the beginning of autumn and it is soft like a distant whistle. Just like we were 8 years old and this was the end of recess, but really, you and I have never stopped playing. And I feel like that's what makes this so great, is that we laugh as often as we breathe. But I apologize if I'm getting off topic. This is supposed to be a poem about how I listen to you pitter-patter across the room as the sun rises, and I still pretend to be asleep. My eyes shut while I hear the splashing of water against skin from the bathroom. And these are the moments when I feel most lucky, when the steam is sliding out from behind the door and you emerge looking like everything that has ever mattered. And I can't pretend to be asleep anymore because how could I keep lying about how remarkable it is to get to see you each day before the rest of the world does? Now, by this time, I've gotten out of bed and started looking for the iron, which I can somehow never seem to find. And it's not like I need it anyway. It's not like my pants are that wrinkly. But sometimes routine feels nice because it is familiar. And you are something that I hope remains familiar for as long as I keep waking up each morning. These mornings full of NPR and exercises we're a bit too tired to do. But we do it anyway because one day we'll have kids. And hopefully they'll have kids, and we want to be healthy enough to run around the park with them while they ask us questions about how plants grow and why dogs seem like they can run forever. And I know I keep talking about forever, but it's hard when that's all I see in the mornings when you kiss me and pitter-patter across the floor while I pretend to be asleep. I'll read this last one. I think part of this book was written largely in response to Michael Brown being killed in Ferguson. So written over the course of the last 2 years. And then the first sort of iteration of the manuscript, I realized that I was writing almost kind of singularly into the violence that Black people were experiencing at the hands of the state. And that was purposeful in the sense that I wanted to capture and illuminate and humanize those names and this phenomenon in effort so that I myself and hopefully others who read it didn't become numb to what we were seeing and didn't render it a sort of abstraction. But I realized that I was kind of singularly writing about that, and I had to sort of step back and check myself because it was important to remind myself that we are not singularly defined by the things that seek to kill us. And we are not singularly defined by like the violence we experience, and that, the diasporic experience is defined by so much more than what is perpetrated against us. And I grew up in a home with a lot of joy and laughter and celebration, and in part of a community in which that is the case. And so I wanted to write into those joyful moments as well. And one of those wonderful moments was that my parents used to dance together in the kitchen all the time. It's wonderful. It was wonderful until recently. I went back home for Thanksgiving, and now all my brothers and sisters and I are all adults now. My parents feel like they can like make sex jokes, which is not comfortable. Like I brought my fiance home and I was like helping her do the dishes, and my dad was like making all these jokes about like soap and suds, and it was terrible. And I was just like, I don't want this life. I don't want this. So this is a poem about the two of them. When Maze and Frankie Beverly come on in my house, Mom's eyes close. She raises the spatula as if she were going to orchestrate the gumbo into existence, turns the knob so that we feel the bass thundering in the walls. At the start of verse 1, she points to Pops, walks over, shoulders oscillating back and forth between the melody. Pops does the same dance he's been doing since 73. Left knee, right knee, pop, snap. Left knee, right knee, pop, snap. Everybody recognizes that as the old man dance regardless. At the start of verse 2, Pops drops his shoulder, bites his bottom lip, and does some sort of spin move, pivoting on his left foot. When he does this, it's unclear if he's hurt his back or if he's doing an unauthorized version of the sprinkler. The way his hands flip and turn and slap box the sky between them. The way mom looks confused as to what exactly is happening, but she goes with it, because she's fly like that, and has never left Pops hanging on the dance floor. At the start of verse 3, smoke alarms are going off in the kitchen. Their hands are clasped now, fingers interlocked, swinging each other back and forth. Their feet are now music of their own. At the end of the song, Frankie's voice begins to fade, but they keep dancing. She holds her hand on the back of his neck. He pulls her in closer. She looks at him, kisses him between the sweat rolling down his forehead. Then they laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh long after the song has stopped. Thank you.
So the next 4 readers are going to be Keith Jones, Gail Mazur, Jill McDonough, and David Rivard, and they'll read in that order. Please welcome them. You have bios here.
I'm going to try to sit. Cheers. Thank you. Yeah, right. Better, much better. Thank you. Thank you, Christina. This community that you've gathered here is such a reflection of all that you've cultivated. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I'll be reading from a manuscript that's forthcoming entitled Blue Lake of Tensile Fire. Graven Shore. I blaze into you, into Ceres, a cadence derived from wind, wherein seas blow, blossoms itself, and lands as cloud, tremulous vapor, woven exemplarities that move. A climb, garish, large to antecedents, the areas small, vernacular, an island of razor wire you've built a cathedral within. Has no altar, nor walls, but blurred defenses, pockmarked benches, pews hewn from rifled bone. And this is where you burnt distraction, pent infinitude that rings, graven aurora, in layers, obdurate, impenetrable, as Oppen says. He says, at the cusp, the stone will not repeat, does repeat, faces plunged in the falsely geographic, will return, in place, reactionary, numerically, of coincidence, shifting the secret as it passes, what sweet substances fall into the all of the inner, shore of issue we hovered at, broke recidivist wave, quiet call, a tumult, I shall leave you in sheaths, a phoneme, ironame, glitter with, the solid state, a fusion, a feather, soft candle, the cave, a gaze, a mirroring of ourselves. A series there is a tightening of, sharp split of cadences. If occurrences could have its only thing, that thing would be finitude, or an attitude of sparkles. What waves do past twilight, when moon becomes its washerwoman, and we all sprawl in her parchment hems. It's lunatic to think ourselves alone. Remember how pressed the ocean is. Parsed nautical charts, alcove above your bed. Growing, you hold me, enfold me, the lattice which is our wound, and I and you in thicket is an opening, and I as you enter. Addendum's gift. And what is birth? An instant to occupy air? My purpose here, blasphemous. I haven't, and yet I have entered you. How is now about feeling? I'll let you lie sideways through soft, ventriloquized air. I'll not leave you redundant. I, skyward, I, elk, I, all mysteries of A. You who confound my isolated assumptions, I'm the worry of. You of wishful thinking, as if there were another island into which my wolf heart might go, out of you and be contained in that light that night obtains from shadow. And a candle I made for you. And it carries across in loose participles, we allure vague speech to come out from hiding. Its belonging a foreign bequest. Oh, lithe-leafed linden, your shade, legs pressed, into which I disappear. It's of Rhodes' mental thing, Da Vinci, the same old command. We've split the atom of English, made it spin, again, flagrant, indicative. We imitate, we make move. That these were all extremities until you were wayward enough to feel how far, how over, till you begin again. Your wound to see, your aperture, herds, old antelope, their flanks and stick-like feet, driven by flint, was never long ago. In dye and bead, the oracle wove, strung, broke bone. The whole of it. Your countenance I can no longer see. I see the sea through you. Rose without rose water, window without frame, sheerest concrete contact, and a candle I made for you. For last, lost recovery, sable, pin-pricked visage. I'm not done with the making of your and my poesis. Valences of. I give you world, deliverance of means, my country, a place of dry rock, vernacular, ordered, if it rained, would disappear. We thus another firmament for cleansing. You overhear it all in the crescendo you cup to your ear. Root of and clasped a chord, see to it, open ocean. How many depths her voice had lifted, wedded to the all of it, and changed. Plenum. A throbbing plenum, paint candlelight, in your bed, in the folds of your delirium. No of, no at, no in, but there. Contemplation tells of itself in secret touch, what time can give to time in motion, companion to those no longer sutured, tonight. Having stood forever for whom and what I am not worthy of, the maker of this one thing is on the road, is of the road, comes to edges that'll cut you into other demarcations, your ghostly, finite vessel. Solstices, lapping tides, song, and gowns, shadow, presenting a wall, canvas through which woven forms will pass. Shroud, I carry us, as words fall, landscapes build, scatter, various blocks of being. Raft. To have set out to dream, it were as if all ashes. Why convene an epilogue, a place, roots in your hand, dug up disbelief, spade a blade of equivalences. It's the movement of the particular, that it moves, has moved, before you think it can, or have known it has, Hegel's ladder of forms. Islets awaiting, lost to you, loss you lost, momentary shade, not shield, field I yield to you, comes about the sun, lengthwise, we, new grass, bands of cresting songbirds, a filial wisp. The allegiance intended, thick glass partial chant, covenant though it be haze, and you entangled by a lunar lake, eschatologically in blue, lessons you much. You say rind, allure, like in heaven's crust. Such routes were proportionate, the talk I chose to lose you to. Finding you looking, I look across to cross an element, your face in shade, a shroud, that your skin had been a ritual, a reflection of absences without, at least in principle, at the end, illumined, I imagine, ghosts. Broken forms, lavish rift. Bones in the wind that wave the cypress and disappear across the island. Can winds not touch beyond waters, like in land, touched keys, tall grasses, to be outside in the presence of, to be inside within, surfaces beneath, stretch, I scar, tips where feathers fade, I eat wing, blur past the causeway of. There is no rain, no concept of rain. Moon, an angel's eye, pockets of lilt, life bridges, we wave, pause, blur. This grant of green and blue, whites which burst, yellow, blinking above, pierces through. Dawn is about to happen. You go there as witness, in weaves to reckon with, no warp to the roof of heaven. Gourd you drink black ink from, swallow night and sea, earth's only road to the capital. This motion, music, beside which you lie, is light, life, eerily bridges set off from lucent measures, horizontal lines. All else is absence, broken forms, lavish rift. Crown of ether. You cannot crown this inhabitation as if it were as I am linked to these, that you too were in the eye of distant vertebrae in one neck, fused. Willow, air, cusp, eyes in sun, rushing chambers into which assimilation runs. I cannot choose your otherness, but I can remain error in pixelated light. Your sea abandons me, and I dive down into its ether. Planet paper vowel. I hear them in the trees, she said. Her voice had lifted echoes, summers, winters forever a cave, hollows, soon, mystifies the ledges. Vowel found in other sounds, hard all, stoned flint, axed inward grain of trees nonchalance. I collaborate your will at the limit of braid, ghost, in exchange for arrival. She walks not there, but in pillars of air, she and he of altitudes. Fire doer or door, gaze a maze of beatitudes. She says, I say, you are, arc, leg and root, you of me, and I of birth. Thank you.
This makes you feel like you have to read into it because you're being amplified. So I have to remember to speak up. I assume this will do fine, whatever I do, right?
Just do what that man says.
What,
His name's Jeff.
I'm ignoring him completely. I'm going to start with two poems that are earlier. I want to read this poem called To the Makers because we're here, this great collection, which has been here as long as I can remember, which is a long time. To the Makers. You are like famous cities with rivers and traffic, with architecture from ingenious eras, with protest marches and festivals, museums and pharmacies, and criminal pleasures, all the essentials needed to endure. Reading you, I revisit your structures of grids and avenues, your alleys. I follow overgrown paths. I revisit the terror and joy of being lost, the ways to court discomfort, to dare chaos, the knowledge of drowning in a pitch-dark harbor. Tyranny and wars advanced in your histories, Also, infirmities of soul and body were your portion. Yet you were not yearning only, not heartbreak only. You were not the loneliest people alive. There was your work, and then you had one another. You spoke with gods and heroes. You cherished your conversations in many languages. It is true you were secretive observers, spies, but that was as it has to be. It was only your work you were given to serve. You weren't mere investigators of useless things. The pragmatic seemed no more or less suggestive to you than articles of turbulence or rapture, strands of hair in a basin, light in a dusty stairwell, a pitcher of sangria, woe and laughter, the feel in the hand of a broken thing. Day by day, your lives were a tumult of beginnings. When you began, you couldn't know. This you keep showing me, where your constructions would lead. What you made from the inchoate, muscled and shaped, not towards the monumental, but toward a form of truth that would matter. The inaccessible become necessary. Though I am speaking to you, I'm not alone, nurtured by your art. Even today, you animate the minutiae of the vast, unsigned cosmos. And though the 20th century ended without you, now decades after your precipitate departures, your pages are still touched by many, still touch many, and the lit screens you never used sing your lines. I would not read that just to not have to say precipitate, actually. I hope I had the right number of syllables in there. And this poem was written exactly 8 years ago in a different era, and it in a way it seems to me now that it was written in a dream. But it wasn't a dream. The age. For what seemed an infinite time, there were nights that were too long. We knew a little science, not enough, some cosmology. We'd heard of dark matter. We'd been assured, although it's everywhere, it doesn't collide. It will never slam into our planet. It somehow obeys a gentler law of gravity. Its particles move through each other. We'd begun to understand it shouldn't frighten us that we were the universe's debris, or that when we look up at the stars, we're really looking back. It was hard to like what we knew. We wanted to live in the present, but it was dark. Ignorance was one of our consolations. The universe was expanding at an accelerating rate. We'd been told we were not at its center, that it had no center. And how look forward with hope if not by looking up? I told the others we ought to study history again. History teaches us more than erasures, more than diminutions. There'd be something for us there. I also dared to say we could begin to work at things again, to make things, that I thought the hours of light would lengthen, that nature still works that way. We would have a future. Up to then, we'd been observing anniversaries only of mistakes and catastrophes. The darkness seemed to blanket, to contain our terrible shame. I don't know if anyone listened to me. It doesn't matter. Gradually, afternoons began seeping back. As I'd promised, the children could walk home from school in the freshening light. They seemed more playful, singing nonsensical songs, so marvelous, catbirds wanted to mimic them. Why say anything? Why tell them the endless nights would return? Listen to them. The name of a new leader they trust on their lips. Oh, 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 they chant. And I hear like one struggling to wake from a mournful dream. We swam to an island of bees. This is set in a place on Cape Cod where the town that I lived in as a child was actually the land had been granted to the Mashpee Wampanoag, so it was a Wampanoag town. Its political structure was Wampanoag. And that also seems like a dream now. In the winters over the years, when people were struggling, developers from Boston in the 1920s started to come down and buy up pieces of their land. So it's not an Indian town anymore. We swam to an island of bees. We swam to an island of bees and poison ivy, catbrier, and low-hanging blueberry bushes, of coarse sand we could lie on to dry ourselves in the July sun. The only sounds the bees buzzing, the cacophonous calls of herons, inhospitable tangle of an island we liked, forbidding little island, I'd heard the Wampanoag call, "Get off it." There were two others in the lake, one they'd named Stay on It. It had a battered duck hunter's shed, and Come to It, a grassy glade hidden inside a grove of black walnut trees that had once covered all Cape Cod, perfect for boat building, perfect for houses and a deforested Eden. Some days we'd stay on Come to It, lying peacefully in its soft grasses, resting for the swim home, telling ourselves things we wanted to do, tickling each other's arms and throats with tender blades of grass, while across the unblemished lake, a reddening cranberry bog I knew honeybees would soon be working over. That was before a kind of libertarian rage fueled the lake's motorized boaters, before they firebombed the quietest floats. That day, from our island of thorns and poisonous leaves, the swim back seemed long. We were drowsy, the dusty little blueberries delicious, manna. The bees hummed and investigated our sun-warmed skin as we lay, not moving, just resting, nothing to harm us there, nothing in that first chapter of our life that stung. And my husband was an artist, and this poem refers to two Japanese artists, Hokusai and Hiroshige. Mount Fuji. Hokusai and Hiroshige, my first presents to you. Two linen-bound books that closed with looped ribbons and faux ivory clasps. Decades later, we gaped at Fuji from a window of Japan Air and gasped together in Narita, a park so immaculate, white rocks gleamed graphic in a river of gravel. Later still, you'd move between the floating worlds of ukiyo-e woodcuts and Chinese landscapes, whose surfaces entered you as if it had been faded. This is all true, what I'm going to say. A draftsman's draftsman, Hokusai at 70, thought he'd begun to grasp the structures of birds and beasts, insects and fish, of the way plants grow, hoped that by 90 he'd have penetrated to their essential nature. And more, by 100, I will have reached the stage where every dot, every mark I make will be alive. You always loved that resolve, you'd repeat joyfully, Hokusai's utterance of faith in work's possibilities, its reward, that at 130 he'd perhaps have learned to draw. In Edo, then, his beloved Fuji was seen as the true source of immortality, as for him it was to be. Will you always give me such spectacular gifts, you asked me that day when we were 20. So, two short poems. Late summer. I stood on the flats with the sandpipers and the gulls. There's a sense of proportion here, like I'm the biggest thing. I stood on the flats with the sandpipers and the gulls. The flock of pipers was not afraid of the enormous, fierce-looking gulls, and the gulls were unafraid of me, and none of us was diminished by the other. The harsh cries of those gulls, the piping syllabics of such tiny running birds, the invisible protein they foraged, their meticulous little bills, their genius at finding in the biofilm what they needed. Soon all but the gulls would leave, their season here over, and I too would leave. When I walked back to the shore over tide-strewn pebbles and the jagged shells of oysters and scallops and crabs, my feet had become a child's feet again, uncomplaining, pliant. Time had gone by, but in those moments there was no pain. I recalled nothing of grief or fear or despair. Grief, fear, despair, as if I were sleepwalking. Those were not the elements of that August afternoon. And this poem is called The Conversation, and it's in response to a friend who's beginning to lose her memory. The conversation. It had come so easily, but then she'd lose the delicate thread of her narrative, as if a small wooden dory had slipped its mooring, floating away from the warm, splintering dock, away from whoever and whatever knew how to row across the deep, bewildering lake, aimless, no talent or adamant will to change course, only a light breeze to propel the craft unwitting, alone into twilight, its frayed rope dangling, scrawling along the surface, the abstracted story. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. That was awesome. This is a really nice group. Thank you. I love us. Oh, thank you. Yes. Dear gay bashers, the night we got bashed, we told Rusty how they drove up, yelled queer, threw a hot dog, sped off. Rusty, now, is that gay bashing, or are they just calling you queer? Good point. Josie pitied the fools. Who buys a perfectly good pack of wieners and drives around San Francisco, chucking them at gays? And who speeds off, missing the point, the pleasure of the bash? Dear bashers, you should have seen the hot dog hit my neck. The scarf Josie sewed from antique silk kimonos. So gay. You missed laughing at us confused, your raw hot dog on the ground. Josie and Rusty and Bob make fun of the gay bashers, and I wash my scarf in the sink. I use Woolite. We worry about insurance, interest rates, not hot dogs thrown from F-150s, homophobic freaks. After the bashing, we used the ATM in the sex shop next to Annie's social club, smiled at the kind owner, his handlebar mustache. Astrid Gilberto sang, tall and tan and young and lovely, the girl from Ipanema, and the dildos gleamed from the walls, 100 cheerful colors. In San Francisco, it rains hot dogs, pity the fool, ass-sized penguins, cock after cock, in azure acrylic, butterscotch glass, anyone's flesh tone, chrome. An hour with an Etruscan sarcophagus. Not the carved seals or gold libation cups, mummies, alabaster urns. 2 minutes alone with this Etruscan sarcophagus, and I'm in tears. Nobody saw. I totally got away with it. Something about the stonecutter's wife, I think. Not the rich couple together in stone forever. Not even the man who carved the jowly face, the woman's hands on her husband's chest doughy, even carved in stone. But the wife, who knows they don't get an Etruscan sarcophagus, that even though her Etruscan husband carves them, they can't have this softening of death, this consolation prize. Last week, midnight in a friend's kitchen, I burst into tears over what I don't get. Wished aloud I'd gone to Goldman Sachs after college, how then Josie wouldn't have to work. Rachel put her arms around me, said, shh, said, Jill, you've made all the right choices. You've done everything just right. I'm always wishing for money, for new sighting, just one job, a week off for Josie, off her feet. But today, fresh from the Etruscan sarcophagi, I'm bigger. Wish for all of us, for you, for the stonecutter's wife, for your children's children, such a friend in such a kitchen, such a crying jag. An hour with an Etruscan sarcophagus to think it all over, write it down. I have all this now. I got a tenure-track job and I got a car, a dishwasher, and a dryer. and then I won the Lannan, and we got new siding on our house. But before I did that, I took the money from the Lannan and I went to the Metro Credit Union and I explained to the manager that I wanted to hold it. I wanted to hold the money. And it took them a long time to understand that I wanted to hold the money, but she finally was like, oh, it would be like a stack of hundreds. And I was like, no, bitch, 20s. Like, I want. So yeah, I have a lot of pictures of all the money. Then I put it back. I put it right back. 3 a.m. Our cab driver tells us how Somalia is better than here because in Islam, we execute murderers. So fewer murders. But isn't there civil war there now? Aren't there a lot of murders? Yes, but in general, it's better. Not now, but most of the time. He tells us about how smart the system is, how it's hard to bear false witness. We nod. We're learning a lot. I say, once we are close to the house, I say, what about us? 2 women married to each other. Don't be offended, he says gravely. But a man with a man, a woman with a woman, it would be a public execution. We nod. A little silence along the southeast corridor. Then I say, yeah, I love my country. This makes him laugh. We all laugh. We aren't offended, says Josie. We love you. Sometimes I feel like we're proselytizing, spreading the word of gay. The cab is shaking with laughter. The poor man relieved. We're not mad. He sort of wants us dead. The 2 of us soothing him, wanting him comfortable, wanting him to laugh. We love our country, we tell him, and Josie tips him. She tips him well. Josie is the Packard that's the granddaughter of FC Packard. Yeah. And we just met, at a bar on May 2nd, 1999. It didn't have anything to do with this place. Yeah. Here's a poem about teaching in prison, which Tanya also teaches in prison, and so does Clint. All 3 of us do some teaching in prison. And actually, Clint knows this, but he's the only one. The way that I met Clint was right when he got accepted to Harvard. He came to a panel that I gave about prison education at Split This Rock. And afterward, you know how sometimes people ask questions after a panel, but they're not really questions. They're just like, they just want to talk. And he wanted to talk, but what he wanted to talk about was like the righteous rage that there isn't more prison education. And I was like, your anger is correct. That is good. I like your anger. You should. So I told him about what the teaching that he could do in Boston, and then he moved here and he taught in the prison. Isn't that lovely? And then he published that great book. I'm so excited for him. This is your chance. English composition at South Middlesex Correctional Center. Julie reads out loud, and I praise her super thesis, then show how her paragraphs veer away from it. Just summarize. And is she pissed? Too pissed to listen when her classmates try to help. Amanda offers Act 2, Scene 1, Now I Do Love Her Too, as evidence of Iago's state of mind. But Julie's shutting down, frowning at her handwritten draft, writing that took her weeks. Hey, Julie, I say. Julie doesn't look up. Says what? Says, I hate this stupid paper now. So I say, hey, Julie, Amanda's helping you. Write down what she's saying. She says, I'm aggravated. I think they take classes on naming their feelings. I say, I know it, but you need to pull it together or you'll end up screwing yourself. This is your chance. We're all quiet, breathing together, willing her to break out of this. Then a little miracle. I look around the room and see that everyone is beautiful. Each did something special with her hair. Hey, I say again. I say hey a lot in prison. Hey, wait a minute. What's up with everybody's hair? Mabel got a haircut. Ellie's hair is long and black and gleaming down her back. Amanda's in French braids. Julie is freshly blonde down to the roots. You guys all look great. They laugh. They're happy I noticed. Thank God I noticed. Now, for a minute, we are women in a room talking about their hair. Julie says Amanda did her highlights and Sandy blew it out. Good job, guys. She looks great. And then I say, Julie, look at you. All pissed off over your paper when you're so lucky. Look at all these good friends you have, helping with your paper, doing your hair. She nods. She looks me in the eye, back with us, back on track. I know, she says. I need to work on my gratitude. I'm going to read one poem from my forthcoming book, which is called Reaper. And I don't think you need to know. It's seasonal. It's festive. Snow drones. We go see the Rockettes start up with jingle bells, light up antlers, brown velvet leggings on 36 dancing girls, pulling Santa's sleigh. This is America. Privilege, wonder, I love it. The Rockettes, a kaleidoscope, satisfying geometry. Their synced legs sexy, sure, but also organized. Watching them, we're soothed, made whole. Dancing girls in coats on a double-decker bus, in Santa suits, in loops of partridges, pear trees, 5 golden rings, in red or green sequins, wrapped like gifts, like starlight mints, glinting with crystals and lights. Rosy-cheeked, unsmiling women dressed as toy soldiers, facing a prop cannon that goes boom. So they slump back, lock arms, and fall too slowly, in a unison that makes me wince. They break time open, make all the sparkles and kicking stop too long, a second too long, let in real soldiers, cannons we don't pay to think about. Before the living nativity's robes and camels, before unto you a child is born, snowflakes rise out of the orchestra pit. They dip and bob, and we understand what we're seeing. Say at once, delighted, drones! We tilt our heads back to watch them glide, miraculous, ignoring the gleaming half-dressed women dancing their legs off for us. We gawp at the drones, the absurd snow drones, whisper, they see you when you're sleeping, and laugh. Then the ticker tape snow starts falling on us, on the audience, keeps falling, thick and ridiculous, wealth of it, a blinding plenty. It fills our clothes and purses, becomes something we shuffle through to get out. For days, we find it in our hair, our pockets. It's everywhere. We can't shake it. All for us. Thank you.
I think Christina needs another hand. Yeah. Thank you for organizing this and bringing this rather wonderful group of people together. And thank you for all you do during the year. It's a long year. I'll be writing a letter to the Harvard Corporation tomorrow. So many letters to write these days. So I've been reading from this book, it feels like around here for the last 3 or 4 months every week, which means that since a lot of you have been at those readings, that you have heard a lot of the poems in the book. So I was racking my brain today to try to remember what poems I had not really read from. There's probably a reason that I didn't read from them. Let's see how it goes. This is called Stowaways. Though it's true our fathers' fathers nailed to their doors wreaths of pagan balsam on plowed city streets, far from dark pines, they were not winsome. And as the offspring of their momentum, neither are we. Do we look like pretty boys or missionaries to you? No church bells will ever ring us home, our months held hostage by some warlord over. And we aren't about to hatch a plan to rid the town of bribery either. There are no martyrs here among us. A single flash of lightning would show you that. So if you're looking to us now for reparations, you'd best look somewhere else. We don't believe in cheating, but we often cook the books. We have the ready gifts we were born with, for better or worse. Even if each of us has woken at night and felt himself an immigrant still, with little to call his own but a stowaway's code, a cold window to touch his forehead to and cry. We can tell ourselves that at least we knew the difference between sleeping and waking, but the snow can see that from a distance, we look like all the distance it's fallen through. Well, that sounded better than I thought it would, but I don't think I've ever read that out loud. I'm going to read a poem for Michael Mazur. I guess it's an elegy. I don't really, believe in elegies in some ways, where I feel a need to sort of undermine them at some point in the writing. There's some skepticism about it. Michael Mazur. Did you really have to show up on the Doppler like scroll master Guaoji of the Northern Song Dynasty? Short answer, yes. Clouds and light at rest on tidewater. The marine layer in your paintings, a cousin to calm mist, upcountry, and sister to the seething heaven falling all at once over the lankiest salt hay and most barbarian sand dunes east of the Yangtze estuary. Who am I speaking to now, anyway? Mike. He's here, on this screen, in these words. The friend no longer hurtling forward in any noticeable way. No, he's not. He isn't here. Don't say so. Even if the night ends as it does once a month, with the morning warning, no parking on the odd-numbered side of the street, you will be tagged and towed. Even if all blood hurries to love other blood, loving the sun that shines after street cleaning by the cab stand as Rosh Hashanah picks up speed everywhere at once. I'm going to read a new poem. So I wrote this poem for Tamaj Solomon, who was a dear friend, and there's a sort of odd connection to this room, actually, which is Tamaj always claimed that we met here in 1987 or 88 or so when he came to read. And I felt, and I feel even now, quite sure that we did not meet here. We met a year or two later. But Tamaj always insisted that it was as if he had had a vision of me while he was in this room. And if you know Tamaj's poetry, you know that he had visions. So it's quite possible that we did meet. This is called Xmas Plow. In our Xmas tree ornaments, the reflected lights are green and red LEDs flickering, vexed by the drying sprigs of bluish pine needles. A Scotch pine in an Inman Square sun parlor is a utopian forest tract, urbanized in miniature, room-bound. The street that runs outside the windows, plowed only gently after morning sleet and snow. The solar cycle never betrays us. It's happening as and when we meet. Constant friend, peeved mortal enemy. But the rock-ribbed sun this December 27th has asked to be reincarnated as a small, ragged mole just below the shave line of my beard. Touch it, baby snooks. Rub it hard. Be lucid as the nativity approaches, then fades. Lope along. Got it? A crow stands alone under the milky sun, not in heaven yet. Is Tamage's soul back now in its old haven, a strong box? Great poets foretell their own death in a single line. Bare flurries, barely snowing at all. Bits of clear water in a brilliant mood, frozen amid all the agita and apeshit. A strong box in heaven is a shoebox here. The cardboard box into which Tamaj had once laid a dead rabbit. His hands trembled, he told me later, when he let go of the cold fur. The furiously cold pelt of that rich animal he'd killed totally by accident. So thinking about, I was thinking about what you asked, in your email about, marking the moment of, it's a month after the most recent day of infamy, right? November 8th. So I'm going to read this poem, which is a kind of, I realize, I sort of got into something when I was writing some of the poems in this book, which was basically to kind of write out of a kind of more public voice, a voice that was a sort of we, and in a way, I kind of think this poem is what the Earth might say if it could speak about the American moment that we seem to be in. It's called Work Rules. Split the forked tongue further, and you'll find a perfectionist happy to tell you that you'll just have to love him as is if you want him to be kind. Though the milkers of vipers for venom know better than to trust such a grievous and nasty shareholder. Turf wars and scrums, and more turf wars. It's a losing bet, with or without a tutor. The legislators and policymakers are equipped with insolent voices and a zest for full frontal nudity. They latch on to the affirmative like a toothache to a priest, and we suffer their influence. Some of us stand startled in doorways as weasels in packs flood from the wildwood with a suburban confidence. Some of us kryptonite our bikes to February street signs and understand there is more to the faraway summer than anyone can possibly see. And in the Barrio Nuevo, and on post office steps, and at the Yale Club, and the puppy mill, There is an abundance of eyes staring head down into a face-cloth-sized screen full of liquid crystals. The echoes of field hollers and chain gang chants are there for anyone to hear who has an ear for the new work rules. We all have these me's that wish to be set free at dawn, amid such pagans as we have become with every heartbeat. But the outcome of this epic vendetta might be a rash that you can pick up only from the neurotoxins of dead people. Our neighbor's daughter says she caught it from a guy she danced with at a Paris disco, a horseboy with hypoglycemic charm. He must have been a serial killer. So, I'm going to read one more poem. It's a poem by somebody else, actually. It's a poem by John Anderson. John wrote this poem in 1981 or two, sort of the last time that a really rotten, dead brain floated down the river and found itself in the Oval Office. And, I think it's actually an argument for, in favor of private life, in favor of the confusions and wonders of private life, against the sort of assumption, that we all have to identify, as Americans every single moment of our lives. On the other hand, the poem's called American Landscape with Clouds and a Zoo. So, I will read this. This will be the last poem that I read. Thank you so much again, and thank you all for coming. American Landscape with Cloud and a Zoo. You can be walking along the beach of a quaint northwestern coastal town. On the one hand, the great Pacific Ocean held placid, restless in the sound when it comes over, like those immense woolen gray clouds, layer upon layer, that pour from their Pacific composure, suddenly troubled, moving, troubling, roaring easterly overhead for the inland. America is in trouble, and you're too fucked up to even understand. Buy it. Is America fucked up because it understands itself only too well as you do you? Every time your girlfriend chucks you a lusciously coy smile, you're beside yourself like a sailboat, and every time you think happiness is just like this forever, you're fooled like a kid. America, I'm glad I'm hardly you. I've got myself to think about. In my zone is a fairly large zoo, plenty of room to walk around, shade, and the shade that is increasingly, bitterly, called shadow. Of animals, there are but two, arranged in unpredictable cadence and sequence. One is the renowned leopard of the snow, lazy, humorous, speckled pepper a bit, like the wren that flies from shadow to cage, to shade to shadow. When I mistakenly awaken at night, I dread both the darkness and the inevitable, increasingly querulous birdsong of the inevitable, increasingly wide stun of light. Everything is too brief, eternal, stable, unpredictable. Everything always says, I'm all there is forever, chum. Just see it my way. And I do. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
There's about 2 inches of something to drink over there left, so if anyone wants it. I did want to quickly say, when I had my first job as a poet, the first person I chose to correspond with was Gail Mazur because of her founding of the Blacksmith series, which has just been a remarkable embodiment of what poetry can be everywhere, and in Boston specifically. And I also modeled this on this event on the Poetry Marathon, which, by the way, you should go to the Boston Poetry Marathon in the summer. So just as we are sort of influenced by different structures of poetry, we're also influenced by different ways in which people bring people together. This is a poetic act in of itself. Goodbye. Have a great time seeing the Rockettes in New York. And thank you all so much.